Well, hello.
Believe it or not, it's What's This Bird Live. We did it. We were able to come on
Yeah.
both platforms, and we are here to talk birds. I'm Nate Swick. That's Greg Neise. We're with the
Hello.
American Birding Association. We are going to talk birds and birding with you here on a Friday afternoon or morning, I guess, or evening, depending where you are in the world. For me, it's an afternoon.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to another one. Happy early Turkey Day to those of you who will be celebrating soon
Turkeys.
in a couple weeks. We just a heads up, we will not be doing a What's This Bird Live the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Oh,
We'll come
really?
back. Well, I don't know. I guess we could. I don't know. It's a
we
holiday.
may make an we may make an audible, but we'll see.
It'll all be different subspecies of wild
There's
turkeys.
I may be a little bit tired after watching movies all night long.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah. Hey, folks, we're here.
Yes.
That's Greg. I'm Nate. We're part of the American Birding Association, a membership organization that helps to promote bird watching all across the U.S. and Canada. We're excited to be here. For those of you who are coming to us for the first time, I can't imagine there are that many of you anymore, but I'm going to do the.
But
I'm
we
going to do
hope
the
there
thing
are.
anyway. Yeah. Always. There's always a few. We're going to do the thing. The ABA hosts a number of groups on the social media, namely Facebook. One of those is called What's This Bird? It's a friendly community for people to post photos, videos, descriptions, sound files, etc. of birds that they have seen. And our community there, our admins and members, try to identify those. Every once in a while, we get some birds we want to talk about in a little bit more detail. And that is what these live programs are for. Eric Yanya says, starting at exactly 1 o'clock today. Is this a rare sighting? Yes, it is. The rarest.
It
Will be filling
it
out a
is. And
report
Eric, I will
for
say
the
that usually
appropriate-
usually the culprit is Facebook. We're trying
Yeah.
frantically behind the scenes to get the feed to go so that they're both going at the same time. And today it worked.
It's so worth it for those extra 10 people that watch us on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, there's
Yeah,
9
anyway.
actually.
Thanks, Zuckerberg.
Yeah, so while we're talking about these birds and their identification and other stuff, we're also watching the comments both on Facebook and on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've
always.
got something to say, if you want to ask a question, pop into the comments. We're watching, and we'll do our best to get to you. How's
Isn't
November?
the live
Huh?
part of this program is the exciting part of it. This is bird identification by high wire. There
Yes,
are
it
no
is.
nets. We are taking the most dangerous route to identifying these birds. November it is pretty good here. I mean, I was just filling out the rare bird alert that I do every Friday on the almost every Friday, most Fridays on the ABA website. I'm going to finish that as soon as we finish up here. But there were
Yeah.
like 5, 6 first records this week. Add to 4 additional ones last week. November it is hopping. It's rarity season all across the continent. Song thrush in California, king eider in Oklahoma, short-tailed shearwater
That's
in
the one I was going to
Wisconsin.
mention.
Yeah, it's been a wild week all across the continent, and Delaware's first spotted towhee. A lot of cool stuff being seen. If you are
Yeah,
a bird
well,
watcher,
and
please get out and go find some
yesterday,
yourself.
Tennessee got their second, I believe, second Cassin's kingbird.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm gonna put that on the
Yeah,
list.
yeah, it was
Good stuff.
just
They
put
must
into
have
the
put it on
Tennessee
River,
RBA this morning. It was posted. The person wasn't sure what it was and posted it asking for an ID, and it turns out it's a Cassin's kingbird.
I think that's how North Carolina's first Cassin's kingbird was found a few years ago. What is this weird? Actually, it is in the middle of summer, so it was not a November bird. Hey, everybody out there! Boris Belchev, our friend from the Baltic region, many Majorans from Indianapolis, Marcia Balestri, William Palmer from Missouri or Missouri, depending on where you come from. Will Lee from Newfoundland, and Hampton.
Wait, did you
Bay
just say
bringing in defensive-
Newfoundland?
Newfoundland, like understand. I learned that
Newfoundland.
when I joined there. Newfoundland. You got to emphasize the land in Newfoundland. Like understand. That's how I was told when I visited there that one time. Michelle Puplava from Denver, Colorado. Lots of folks.
Yeah,
Drive
we got a
slang.
shout out from Nate in Minnesota.
Nate to Nate. Hey, Nate from Minnesota. I'm Nate from North Carolina. And we are excited to be here to talk birds with you. Greg, do we
Yeah.
have some stuff to to do.
We
We got some
do.
administrative stuff to do
We
before
we
we
have a
get
little
going.
bit. We have a little bit. We'll get to that. Yeah.
I'm
And
not going
as
to
we
get
get in,
fooled where I always say, let's get to the birds. And then it's like a bunch of events that we have to promote.
well, yeah, we have
I've
to
been
always do
fooled me
that.
once. Shame on you.
Um, but yeah, I may have gone a little bit overboard on the comps. You guys will see, and maybe agree, maybe not. I don't think you can ever
Greg
go
likes his
too
comps.
overboard on comps.
No,
But
no.
yeah, so we are right now entering the giving season, and we would like to encourage everyone to hit our website, aba.org, and give a gift if you can, or join, because that is how we do all the things
Gift
we
membership.
do. Yes, and give a gift membership, or there's a lot of different ways to give, and we appreciate every single bit of it. And you keep the lights on, and you keep us doing these things. You keep the magazines flowing and the websites going, and all of it. So
All the things. All the things. Holly Miner just got back from a trip to Queensland. Got 100 lifers. Yeah. Surprised it's just 100, honestly. That's everything's new down there, except for the great egrets.
True.
Well,
True.
for me, I suppose.
Well, should we jump into some birds here?
Yeah, let's do. We're gonna jump right into it. We're moving
All
right
right
along today because we got into Facebook so early.
We did. We weren't sitting around for
Don't
8
know what to
minutes.
do with myself. Here we are.
I know. Hang on. I'm gonna go get some coffee. I'll be right back now.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Mia jumped in. Hi, Mia.
It's not
so
this bird.
So this one comes from Avon, Connecticut, a couple days ago, and the poster was asking, "What is this strange goose that dropped in?" And with the Canada geese, and looks like possibly
with
cackling.
The Canada geese.
Looks
Yeah.
like maybe cackling. Hard to say, but we'll talk
Maybe
about
hard
that
to
later.
say. It's pretty scarce in Connecticut, I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, Canada geese, this is the time of year to find your local Canada goose flock and look for weird geese.
Yeah.
Because they always like to tuck in with these kind of urban/suburban flocks of Canada geese, and it's often a great opportunity to find unusual geese in your neighborhood. And anything that is large and dark in Connecticut is going to be something worth paying attention to.
Absolutely.
Even the regular large and dark, like greater white-fronted goose, is at very best, uncommon, annual in some numbers, but not a common bird. But this does not look like a greater white-fronted goose, in part because the front looks quite dark. The head is quite dark. There's not much to go on. It looks like it's got a bicolored bill, that pale tip. Even in these relatively soft and poor photos, you can get that. Look at those feet. Look at those feet, Greg.
Yeah, you can see feet of a certain color dangling down there below that really really
Salmon.
striking tail and rump.
Rose.
Like double triple horseshoes happening there.
Shoes. That's very good luck, and it is good luck to find this bird in the EVA area.
It really is.
Speaking.
So we'll kind of cut to the chase here, or cut to the comp actually.
Salmon.
But this is another example of what's this bird strikes again, and we'll talk about that here. So let's look at the dark geese in the eastern part of the ABA area, and there's quite a few choices.
Yeah, as we said, greater white-fronted goose is on there. It typically has an all pink bill, pretty bright colored bill on those adult birds, and a big white forehead. Those are pretty apparent.
Although you'll notice that the greater white-fronted goose that I included sitting is a juvenile, which does not have the big white forehead.
Yeah, but it does have the big pink bill.
It does.
Brant. A lot of brant on the East Coast, especially up around Connecticut. I think Long Island Sound is one of the more highly concentrated brant areas on the continent. But there's some things that don't look right for brant. For starters, brant has a black head and a black neck, and like the breast is like dark black as well. The darkness on this bird seems to be focused primarily on the head, on the face, and it's kind of a gradient down the neck.
Yeah.
Snow goose, those dark snow geese, always a good one, but they've got a lot of pattern on the back. Greg, do you want to reveal this one? I feel like I've
Well, yeah, I
talked
mean,
around
well,
it.
the things that really stand out to me with this bird are the tail pattern, which is just crazy obvious,
Triple
but also
horseshoes.
how pale the upper wing is.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the birds, in our comp here, the blue-phased snow goose has pale upper wings like that, but it has a dark tail and
Mm-hmm.
a white rump. It's or a pale rump. So that really doesn't fit. And also, by the time they don't really have that dark head like that for very long. By the
Mm-hmm.
time you get
Yeah.
into mid-November, they're starting to show white flecks and little white eye rings and
Yep.
stuff that kind of stands out. So really, our two choices here are pink-footed goose and greater white-fronted goose, and
Mm-hmm.
the the tail patterns are quite similar, but the pink-footed goose is much more exaggerated with that
A
broad
lot more
white
white.
tip. The tail itself is paler. The horseshoe white rump is bigger and bolder, and it's got that pale gray upper wing that really gives it a unique. I mean, even as you said in that photo that's low light and kind of blurry,
Mm-hmm.
you can still see all those things,
Yeah.
and you can see the pink legs.
Yep.
And greater white-fronted
Instead of
goose has
orange.
orange
Yeah.
legs, even as a young bird. So yes, the bird in question here is a pink-footed goose, which is a kind of a famous goose, not a famous grouse, but a that's a
Can't
whiskey
drink it,
that
for starters.
that is a
Yeah.
whiskey that I enjoy. I think I might have some on my bar downstairs. No, it is kind of a famous goose because of the movie The Big Year and
Yeah.
the story where that was the bird that was chased throughout the story was
Yeah.
pink-footed goose, and
Didn't Jack
finally
Black's
found
character? Yeah.
finally found in the end in an ice-free pool on top of a mountain in Colorado, which I suppose could
Everyone
happen.
thought was weird until a few years later when actually a pink-footed goose turned
Goose
up in
showed up
Colorado.
in an
Not,
ice-free
not in the
pond.
mountains, not in an ice-free pond. Maybe not in the mountains. You didn't have to hike for it. I think it might have been like a
Yeah.
public park or something. But yeah, pink-footed goose is a formerly a quite rare bird in the ABA area. Still rare,
Oh
but
yeah,
regular,
definitely.
especially in the northeast part of the continent, the New England, the northern mid-Atlantic, certainly Atlantic Canada. It's annual up there now, owing generally to the increase in the population of these birds in Iceland
Yeah.
and Greenland, I believe,
And
as well.
Greenland,
The
yeah.
population has really blown up, and we are benefiting from it here in North America as we are starting seeing several pink-footed geese every year, to the point where they are expanding across the continent. As we said, Colorado had a record.
Yeah.
Maryland, I think, has a record. Virginia has a record now.
No, I think Kentucky has
in
a
the Great
record
Lakes
now.
too. Yeah, they're showing up more frequently, as you'd expect for a bird whose population is growing as this one is.
Yeah,
More
and
birds means more birds to vagrate. So
yeah, and as you and they seem to be Gavin asks, what about bean goose? And a couple of reasons I didn't include bean goose. It's much rarer. And it's
oh, there
kind of
there
its
is
own.
one in Quebec right now.
And I know
And
there is, and there's
California.
one in California too, and that's a bird that's been increasing as well.
Yeah, waterfowl do
But
quite well.
it kind of gets outside. And Nate, you and I talked about that very thing before we
Yeah.
went live. Bean goose, there's two species of bean goose, and they're very difficult to tell apart.
It's a summer identification.
In fact, the one in Arcata, California, there's tundra and taiga bean goose, and the one in California is being identified as a taiga bean goose so far, but eBird hasn't, as far as I can tell, so far the eBird reviewers have not actually
Accepting it as taiga.
accepted it as that yet, and it's been sitting there for a week or two, just not being accepted as anything. And so we'll
The
see
one
what
in
happens
Quebec,
with that
I
bird.
believe they are talking about taiga, but it seems like every time there's a bean goose
Yeah.
that shows up in the ABA area, there's always this discussion. I think just generally speaking,
Well,
bean goose doesn't have that dark head, and it's got a much larger bill, more like a snow goose bill, kind of
I mean,
large and triangular.
it
Well,
depends on the
taiga at
species.
least.
I mean, it depends. You know, the
Yeah.
bill size, shape, and color is it's a very nuanced discussion. That's sort of it's its own thing. So, Gavin, that's why I didn't include bean
You're gonna
goose.
make me look up
Um,
the rump of a bean goose. I'm not exactly sure what
and
how that is different either.
the other thing I wanted to say about pink-footed goose is, as Nate was saying, it is a species that's showing up all over the eastern half of the ABA area, and when the cackling geese come through, check those flocks because they tend to be hanging with cackling geese or white-fronted geese, but cackling geese in particular. And so states that don't have a pink-footed goose yet.
It's been on my list of next birds for North Carolina
check
for
those
about
flocks because
15 years now.
they
been waiting.
really blend in. You think looking at that bird, you're like, oh, if that was in a group of cackling geese, I'd pick it out immediately. You would be surprised, shocked at how much geese blend together. I will never forget when there was a brant in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and I went walking up and down the lakefront to try to find it. And the geese on the lakefront, they walk right up to you, and
Yeah.
as we see with geese, out of range geese that get into Canada flocks, they just go with the flow. They just walk around in the park. And I walked right up to this brant and didn't see it until I was 10 feet from it. And I was looking for it. They really blend in.
The county, I've had that experience both with red geese in my county.
And I had a barnacle goose do the same thing.
Greater white-fronted goose, yeah, and the first Ross's goose I had in the county were just hanging out at a retention pond. The Ross's goose was at a retention pond with a flock of Canada geese. The greater white-fronted goose was in a public park with a bunch of geese on the driving range.
Yeah.
The golf driving range. Yeah, they take their cues from the geese that they are with, and that makes sometimes rare geese quite tame seeming.
Yeah, and don't. So you keep your eyes open for this species and check those goose flocks, like even the ones that are in subdivisions and golf courses. You think, oh, this bird's going to be at a national wildlife refuge. Like, no.
I mean, it could be.
It could be, but
it's just as
geese,
likely to be
but
the flock at your local park. Yeah.
The Canadas and cacklers have learned that subdivisions and golf courses are safe for them, and they take advantage of that. And white-fronted really haven't yet. It's a cool thing. Anyways, this is a pink-footed goose, which is an
pink-footed
ABA
goose.
code.
Good bird, Avon.
Code 3
I'm sure they
vagrant.
have them every year, but always a good one.
Yeah. All right. Sticking in the Northeast for the moment, in Sharon, Massachusetts, this was I think it was a week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but it was in November. I'm 99% certain.
To everything there is a season.
To everything. So I think one of the suggestions was a leucistic swallow. Leucistic, for people who don't know, are birds that have pigment issues when they are white. They have white feathering. It's sort of like albino light. It's not full albino. It's a different thing, but
yeah. Few things don't click for swallow on this bird, though it does indeed have a swallow tail.
Yes.
Long pointed slim wings. This is clearly a bird that moves well on the wind, but swallow, very small head, compact, and a very, very tiny bill on all swallows. This bird does not have it. This is a much longer bill. This is sea swallow. I think is one colloquial term for this group. This is a tern, one of our water birds. And this is an interesting one because there's some weird stuff going on with this bird. When I see a tern this late in the season, inland, I mean, I don't know exactly where Sharon is. I suppose I should look it up.
Yeah,
looks like does not look like a beach situation with that greenery behind it. This time of year, you're looking at common versus Forsters for the most part, and inland, as this bird appears to be based on the background, it's almost
Yeah, but
always
again,
always
in
Forsters.
November,
There are
birds can
commons
show up
around.
anywhere, and we've got Lucy on Facebook suggests sandwich tern, which is a good
That's what
suggestion.
we're gonna talk about.
Which is a good suggestion, and a suggestion that was made a lot in the group when this bird was posted, because as you can
Yeah,
see, it has an apparent yellow tip on the bill, which is
yeah.
a usually slam dunk field mark for
That is the field mark for
sandwich tern.
sandwich tern. Yeah, sandwich tern has a long black bill with a yellow tip, but there's
Yep.
some things that are not right for sandwich tern. Sandwich tern is one of
No.
the Thalasseus genus terns, along with
Yep.
royal tern. They tend to be very long-bodied birds with
Yep.
relatively short tails, and the tail on this bird is not a sandwich tern tail. The body on this bird is not a sandwich tern body. I mean, this is sandwich tern is a kind of a chunky tern. And this is a much slighter tern. And in fact, the pattern on the head does not look right for sandwich tern, which, as we can
No.
see in this lovely composite that
Thank
Greg
you.
has created, sandwich tern has in the winter it has this band that goes all the way around the back of the head, much like a royal tern. In fact, those two birds are found together almost always,
Yep.
at least where I live. And it doesn't have that. It's got that bandito mask, that panda bear mask of a Forster's tern, but that makes that yellow tip, that yellow appearing or pale appearing tip to the bill all the weirder, because everything says Forster's tern to me on this bird except for that yellow tip. So what's going on here?
Well, couple of things. One, their bird soft parts, hard parts. Yeah, I mean, is it possible for a sandwich or a Forster's tern to have a pale tip to its bill? I suppose so.
I need to go
I
look at
kind
Macaulay
of,
Library and
I kind of
look at
think
some
though
photos
that
of sandwich terns.
I
Or
kind of
Forster's
think though
terns.
that it's a photo artifact. The photo
My
is
impression as
blurry.
well.
It could be something as simple as, I don't know, a water droplet on the tip of the bill that's just out of
Would be
focus.
my guess.
Um, it's the yellow tip on that bill is uh, really throwing things off. But as Nate said, the headband versus eye patch is usually slam dunk. The bill on a sandwich tern is bigger, thicker, more spike-like,
It is thick. Yeah.
and it has a shorter tail. It doesn't have that nice,
It's
long,
shaped very
swallow
differently.
tail.
Yeah.
And it's
It
just
fly quite differently as well.
yeah. Now I included least tern not because that's really a serious consideration here, but as we like to point out, in a photo like this, you really can't tell the size of the bird because there's nothing to relate it to, and it's least tern actually is very similar to these groups of tern if it's just isolated in the air.
If it's
But
isolated.
if you
Yeah.
see one, if you see one in person, you're more likely to confuse a least tern with a shorebird like a phalarope or something than
Yeah.
another tern. They're just
Yeah, least tern is such a unique bird.
yes,
In flight, I mean, it's a unique silhouette. It's like it's got
yes,
this super quick, buzzy wing beat, which is very much like a shorebird, as you say, Greg. Not like the sort of graceful, kind of butterfly, kind of loopy, buoyant flight that we see in the sternoterns, like a Forster's tern, or even like the more kind of direct flight that we see in a sandwich tern. It's super unique, and also, this is a situation where status and distribution comes into play as well, because at least where I live in the southeast, and I think further north, least tern is pretty much out of here by the end of September. Like that is a
yes,
very rare bird past September, and if I saw a leastish looking tern in Massachusetts in November, like I'd almost be thinking little tern before I
yeah.
was thinking least tern, just because least terns are so predictably gone to the south by very, very early.
Yeah, and in October, November, when you see something like, all right, so sandwich tern as an example,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe 8-10 years ago, we had a sandwich tern on Lake Michigan in
Oh yeah, you're
October,
thinking,
and
or
it turned out to be a
real
European.
sandwich, the
It turned
original
out to be a
sandwich.
European sandwich tern, which I think
Yeah.
is going to be split at some point.
at some point.
And shout out to Chris Sloan, who says sandwich tern typically has a much longer appearing bill, especially in proportion to the head and body. And yes, that is absolutely
those Thalasseus
correct.
terns that have kind of long, loopy bills. I'm thinking of like royal tern and elegant tern as well, and the crested terns in the old world. Tony Diamond in YouTube says Birds of the World has photos of pale tip to the bill in a Forster's non-breeding. So this is maybe perhaps not an artifact, though it maybe is exacerbated by the photo softness. But it's not an unusual field mark. So good on that. Thank you, Tony, for that.
There we go.
Forster's tern.
Yes, this is a Forster's tern.
Good winter bird up the East Coast.
Yeah, it is.
Pretty much. Nice to find.
Okay.
Oof.
Going up north there to Canada, eh? What do we got? We got something flying away from us. Got some white wing patches and
white wing patches. A lot of pattern on the wing. Chunky body, relatively short, rounded wings. My impulse on this thing when I first saw it was waterfowl.
Yep.
Duck. So where are we going from there, Greg?
Duck or duck adjacent?
Speculum. Some cool pattern on the tertials there. And is it looking down? Is it like looking backwards at us? What is this dark?
I've been looking at that picture for 2 days now, trying to figure out what's going on with that head. And it almost looks like there's part of the picture that's been like photoshopped out.
Have you ever seen sometimes I've seen ducks when they're flying, like they'll kind of turn their head down and like mess with their breast feathers while they're on the wing, like just kind of, clean a little bit. And I wonder if that's something that's going on with this bird. Like what we're actually seeing is the top of the bird's head. That's sort of awkwardly on the front.
I mean, it's whatever's going on there. It's awkward looking, but Nate, as you said, we can see a lot going on with the wing. It's got some pale shafts in the primaries. It's got some, we see some sort of pale gray on the coverts. We've got some white in the speculum and those long white tertials. We also don't see any feet.
No feet.
And one of the things, and we'll get to the comp here in a second. And it says, there's a couple of comps here where I may have gone a little overboard, but whatever.
We love an overboard comp.
But there's a lot of water birds with white wing patches, and
there are
when leading field trips out on the Chicago lakefront, we'd see a bird with white wing patches go by. Invariably, a newer birder will say white wing scoter because it has white wing, and you're like white wing patches,
right
white
in the
wing.
Name. Right
there's a lot of water birds, ducks that have white wing patches. So let's take a look at them.
Ducks.
I know.
Grebes have white wing patches. I think people are always surprised when like a horned grebe flies by and you see those white wing patches on that bird as well. Because you don't always see horned grebes in the air all that much. But I know he's got the redneck grebe on here. It's got the white wing patches. The red-breasted merganser, a couple different mergansers. Bufflehead, big white patches in the wings, especially in the female, a little more limited. Gadwall, classic diving duck with white patches in the wing, and of course our white wing scoter, which I think we can rule out because the white wing is about the only thing that this bird has in common with the white wing scoter.
Exactly.
Scoter, big, dark, heavy-set bird. It's like a flying brick. And this one, it doesn't look as deep bellied, and certainly it's got a white belly, which would rule out white wing scoter too, which is all
exactly. Black. And there is a possibility of female white wing scoter, but which does have a whitish belly, but it wouldn't have it wouldn't have any of the other markings on the wing that we can see. So we can rule that out. Redneck grebe. When you see a grebe flying, especially flying away, they don't really have a tail to speak of, any grebe.
No.
So what you're seeing back there are the feet. And it's pretty obvious because their feet are big and floopy, floppy, and they look kind of silly.
Yeah.
So we can rule out any grebe.
Grebes. Not made.
Gadwall, we can rule out gadwall because of the unique speculum of a gadwall, and the sort of pale gray back, and gadwall also has a black butt and a gray rump. Female would be patterned brown like a mallard, so we can push gadwall out. That leaves us
bigger bird too.
The
gadwall, like a more like a mallard in flight too. This one looks a lot more slender.
Yeah, but ducks when they fly, they get that square bodied. They get that real square bodied look because their flight muscles are gigantic, and when they're sitting on the water, they look all nice and round and poofy. But when they fly, they get this real massive barrel chest. And when you see them in this angle, it's really obvious. So that leaves us the mergansers and bufflehead. And we can see a male bufflehead. The wing pattern just does not fit at all.
Yeah,
we don't see any white in the scapulars.
Yeah.
Female bufflehead, that's
some white in the rump
kind of
as well.
similar there.
Bufflehead. It is similar, but it's lacking that tertial, those patterns in the tertial, and the the difference in the the pale gray of the primary. There, the wing on a female bufflehead is pretty much all more or less the same color, except for that white speculum. And there's a lot more going on this bird.
There is
here, and also it's got a dark rump. Bufflehead's going to have a little bit of pale in the rump as well, and so it doesn't look like.
And red-breasted merganser, especially the male, we can that's got the white. It's got the white stripe on the scaps as well, and it's got the sort of triple-tiered wing, white wing patch. Female red-breasted merganser, it doesn't have those long tertials, and we can see this bird's head. And if it were a female red-breasted merganser dipping its head down like that, it would be brownish, rusty brownish, not black. So really that leaves us with a male hooded merganser.
Yeah, and that was my impression when I first pulled this up, having spooked many hooded mergansers in my day on many small ponds.
Yes.
They are prone to, bolting when you come around the corner. And that's what it looks like. That cool pattern on the tertials is very distinctive for a hooded merganser, and kind of the bicolored wing there. And they're hooded mergansers. This is hooded merganser season. Like they are on all sorts of smallish ponds, and larger ponds too, all across the from southern Canada on down. Very widespread bird in the winter across much of urban/suburban the ABA area. So go out and find one. Probably can.
Yeah.
Probably predict exactly where they are. Yeah, everyone guessed it here. Drake hoodie, hooded merganser, hooded merganser male. Everyone's got it. Everyone's got it correct here. I still can't figure out what's going on with that head.
What's that?
I still can't figure out what's going on that head.
I can't either. Exactly I believe we're looking at the throat. It could be that the bird's head is just down. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with that, and that's
whatever.
That's the most perplexing part of the whole thing, is that black blob that we assume is the head. I have no idea really what's going on with that, because it doesn't look like anything.
No, it's weird. Well, look, this is when you're taking photos of birds like this, don't just take one. Put your camera in burst mode and snap a sequence of 10 photos, and you'll be able to figure out what these are. It's always a good idea to get more photos. Makes it more like a field conditions, which makes these things a little bit easier to
absolutely
identify. For everybody, for you, for us, for
absolutely. And just a reminder that on Facebook and YouTube that we're watching the comments, so if you guys have something to say or have a question, chime in and we will do our best to get to it.
Aiden's portfolio asks, they do often fly with head drooped lower than belly, referring, of course, to the hooded merganser. You can almost see it in the comp that you've done here, Greg.
Yeah, I know. They do.
Angle, but that seems like excessively low. That's the thing. Well, it's not only weird, like it's got a goiter or something.
It's not only excessively low; it's excessively wide. during my zoo years, I spent a lot of time around hooded mergansers because they had them in the collection, and
they're common.
They have kind of narrow heads. They don't have a big wide head. However,
what's going on here.
They do have an inflatable throat sack, pouch, whatever you want to call it, and when they display, they inflate that. But I doubt that that's what's happening here. But who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? But yeah, that really is bizarre. That it's I really can't make heads or tails of that. But regardless, it's a hooded merganser.
Indeed.
All right, we're going to move a little bit west to my home state, Illinois.
The Illinois.
This is an interesting one. And I picked this one for a number of reasons. One, it's a bird that people are seeing a lot right now. Also, the lighting is what we get this time of the year. Even at noon in the northern tier, the light is low. And in the morning and afternoon, it's really low. And you're getting a lot of backlit birds like this. And it can be confusing. And I think that people who know their little birds in the brush, as this one appears to be, will immediately identify this bird based on gestalt. It just feels like one species, and that is indeed what it is. But there are at least two others that are really confusing, and
Greg, people are going to love your composite for this one because everyone on YouTube has mentioned the birds in your composite that we're going to show here.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes. I mean, it's oh Christ, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, this.
I mean, look, let's narrow it down. Let's do the thing. It looks like this is a very small bird based on the twigs that it is on. Bright pink legs and a pink bill. It's got some sort of pattern on the face. Looks like it's got an eye line. Hard to tell what's going on in front of the eye, between the eye and the bill, but there's definitely a line that goes through beyond the eye, and also kind of a dark cap. Plain rump, not a lot to go on the rump. A little bit of a pattern on the wings and back. That's not uncommon for New World sparrows. But the bill and leg color seems important to me. The pattern on the face, that's sort of what we're going to go for. Dark, not red. I think we can say that this photo is accurate in terms of color reproduction. So I feel good about that.
But I mean,
tail is hard to get a sense on because the tail is coming directly at us.
Exactly.
Tail length is a good thing to think about with sparrows, but that's going to be kind of thrown out the window for this bird just because of the foreshortening here.
Yeah, and and the birds that we're looking at for comparison, I used ones with similar foreshortened tails. These three birds have different length tails and different body shapes, but
yeah, for sure.
When they're puffed up on a cold day in the early morning or late afternoon, all of that gets thrown out the window. And when you get it at an angle like this, even more so.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how shape is an important thing to think about when we're looking at sparrows, kind of breaking them down into the buckets of the genus. It's notable that the three birds that we have here are from three different genera. Yes.
And I remember what I was going to say. What you mentioned about the comments in YouTube. Yes, those three were the discussion that happened in the What's This Bird group. Mm-hmm. The same three species being bounced back and forth. But like I said, if you're familiar with this species, you know what this bird is right away. And
for sure, and I think we can break this down. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a matter of gestalt, but it's also a matter of finer detail. And
for sure.
That face pattern. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say American tree sparrow can probably be ruled out right off the bat because American tree sparrow famously has that bicolored bill. That's one of the unique features of that bird. The dark on the top, the
Yeah,
yellowish on
but
the
you know
bottom,
what?
and our
You
bird
know
here
what?
has a pink bill.
I'm going to bounce back.
Okay.
Whoops. I'm going to bounce
That's
back.
quite a change.
I'm going to bounce back here to the picture of the bird. Because of the backlighting, if you told me that bird had a bicolored bill, I wouldn't disagree if all I saw was the bill.
All right, fair enough. Maybe it's
it's just the backlighting. The backlighting is doing stuff here, but we can see the face pattern with the broad supercilium, and a very noticeable line behind the eye that is narrow and kind of goes straight or kind of goes up into the crown a little bit. And that with, as Nate said, the bill, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look, I think you're right, Nate, that if it were bicolored, that it would be even more pronounced.
It would be darker. Yeah.
I think. But we see the little eye arcs. And we also see how that broad gray supercilium sort of feathers up into the crown stripe when the bird is at sort of an alert state. So the three birds we have in question here: American tree sparrow, white-crowned sparrow, and field sparrow. The field sparrow, I think we can rule straight out because it doesn't have that plain face with the bold eye ring. And I think at this angle, the bill would look even smaller. Field sparrow has a rather petite. It has a rather petite bill.
The whole bird looks plush, like a toy version of a sparrow.
Yeah, exactly. It really does. So, that leaves us with American tree and white-crowned. And I think if we spend just a minute looking at this, we can see pretty easily that this is a white-crowned sparrow.
Yeah, I agree. That the way all the things come together, like you mentioned there, I agree with you, Greg. I think that if the bird had a bicolored bill, I think that the difference would be more evident. And of course, the eye stripe being a different shape is too. The interesting thing about this white-crowned sparrow is that, they do have that black mark or dark marking on the cap, and that can kind of appear and disappear based on how the bird orients its head. I think it's noteworthy that the original bird that we're talking about here, it looks like the cap is more extensive than it actually is, which is what I think a lot of people were thinking when they're thinking American tree sparrow for this bird, because it does have kind of a rufous cap that goes all the way back to the nape, whereas white-crowned sparrow, a lot of times when you see them, like you pish at a hedgerow or a fence row, what they like to be, they'll pop up, they'll have their crown kind of jauntily cocked up, and it looks like that that black stripe kind of disappears at the top and it becomes nothing in the back, as we see in the photo in the composite. Birds can give you different impressions based on how they're feeling. They can make those feathers move almost individually.
Absolutely.
And white-crowned sparrow is very prone to doing that. The crown can look quite extensive, or it can look almost focused on the front of the bird, but it's still white-crowned sparrow either way.
Yeah, and the main thing that we can see here, the two main things that we can see are the little white eye arcs, and the stripe behind the eye. And in American tree sparrow, the stripe behind the eye bleeds down into the ear patch, and in white-crowned, it is much less extensive and goes up into the crown. And so it just gives it a completely different feel if that's all you can see.
That's all you can see. Yep, for sure.
So yes, our bird is a young white-crowned sparrow.
How common are American tree sparrows in? I don't know where in Illinois this is. Illinois is kind of a long state.
It depends. It depends on how far north you are. In the northern half of the state, they're common in the winter. In the in the northern third, they can be quite common, and then as you go further south, they get a little harder to find. Truly an Arctic bird, much more so than junco
Mm-hmm.
some of the other birds that we think of as snowbirds.
Yeah, for sure. Boris Belchev asks American tree sparrows with dark legs. Is that correct? I see very few American tree sparrows.
Darker
Way
than the
too far
bright pink
south.
of a white
Darker.
crowned.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, or even when it's cold, I shouldn't say in the winter, but when it's cold, songbirds' bare parts, they can really change. The leg color can really change depending on how cold it is and how much that bird is conserving heat.
Yeah, it's interesting that the white crowned sparrow in the composite has almost orangier legs, an orangier build, and
Well-
kind of bright pink. There's
Well,
just
and
some
that's because
subspecific
it's
variants of
backlit.
those birds as well. Yeah,
And that's also because it's backlit. And the backlighting on passerine legs like that, it can really accentuate the colors a lot.
And see
Because
the-
they're
it's like
almost,
black
they're
bull
so,
or
I mean, they're so thin, they're almost translucent.
yeah.
But yeah, so you got a little sneak of what we're going to next. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
Oh yeah, I forgot we had one more.
We have one more.
But wait.
So now we're gonna go to
Back to
Colorado,
geese.
and we're gonna go back to
with
geese because it is goose season. It is white-cheeked goose season, and I would say that in November, this is. Dave Irons says it's also a different subspecies. I'm not sure what
That's
you're
what I
referring
thought too,
to, Dave.
I was thinking that too, Dave.
What's that?
The white crowned sparrows. Because we look for where I live, we look for those western white crowned sparrows that tend to be a bit more pinky than the ones that we typically get. Well, we don't
Gotcha.
really get typically west of the Appalachians or east of the Appalachians. They're kind of a scarce,
Gotcha.
local, I should say.
Gotcha. So, the white cheek geese.
Elbauer
this
asks
is
leg color of field. Field is pink all over.
pink, very pink.
Pink bill, pink legs.
Yep. Yeah. So this is the time of year that everybody is trying to identify white-cheeked geese, and it can be very straightforward. So the two white-cheeked geese that we have here are, well, there's, if you include barnacle, but we're not including barnacle, are Canada and Cackling, which were somewhat recently split within my lifetime, split into separate species.
It's one of those splits that was not really all that near. It's quite a while ago, but feels
It was quite a while ago.
closer because I was yeah.
Yeah, just don't say you were like
it's like the late
7
90s.
because you're just gonna make me sad.
Late 90s, I think. Probably earlier than that, honestly.
But yeah, so the perennial Cackling versus Canada goose question. You see something like this. This is about as slam dunk as it gets. You've got a Cackling goose in the back, and you've got a Canada goose in front. The Cackling goose in back hits all the field marks with the little teeny stubby bill and the kind of short neck.
3. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
I knew it was late 90s, early 2000s.
The kind of little rounded head and stubby little bill and kind of short necked, and of course it's small.
Yeah.
But-
I mean this Cackling, and I agree, Greg, that the bird in the back here is a Cackling goose and the bird in the front is a Canada goose. It's a little more long necked than I really like to see. Like, it would be one of those things where you're looking at a photo with the birds so far apart from each other, I'm like gonna second guess myself more than I probably would in the field. In the field, I would probably be much more confident. That's generally the way it is with this species pair with me. If I see them in person, I feel much more confident making the call. Photos always screw with my head on these birds. But I agree, the backbird does look Cackling enough for me. There are even subspecies of Cackling goose that are even smaller and more petite than this guy.
Yes, and some that are a little less petite and
those are the ones I hate.
well, yeah, and I think these birds too are at attention. So I think the neck length, if they were more relaxed, a Cackling goose tends to have sort of a stubby little straight neck, and Canada goose can do anything from like a little loop, to anything in between, but you can generally tell. And especially in Colorado.
Did you talk about the head? Sorry, I kind of
did
out there for a little bit.
But we're going to talk about it a lot more.
Yeah, the head does look very cackling.
Yeah. And, you'll remember, you might not remember, but in the early days of the podcast, Ted Floyd and I did an entire podcast about white-cheeked geese in Colorado.
I remember that. Give the people what they want.
Because in Colorado, they get everything just about. But in a lot of places, especially like where I live in the Great Lakes and a little bit east, it can get really confusing. And so before I go to the comp, when you get a Canada goose like the one in the front of this picture, that's pretty easy. It's a big bird with a long neck and a
big bill,
big sloping bill and a square head, big head. But in places like where I live, you get flocks that look like this. And then as Ted and I said,
did not label this composite, Greg.
I did not label this on purpose. And as Ted and I were talking in that very early podcast, there's some birds that you just have to throw up your hands and say, I can't identify this to species.
I've seen those birds out in the east as well.
Exactly. And in Colorado, there's a good number of those.
And I'll be honest, they tend to me to be small Canadas more than large Cacklings. Those are the ones that give me the most trouble personally.
And I wonder how much that's some kind of bias, like
almost certainly. Yeah, because Canadas are so far outnumber Cackling where I live that it's
and in this time of year where I live, the lesser Canada goose is more common, is the most common that you see floating around on ponds and stuff. And they really do approach Cackling goose in gestalt and all of it. And when you get right into the middle there, so these birds here, the top three are Canada geese, the lesser Canada goose subspecies, and the bottom six are Cackling geese of different flavors. But you can
people
sort of
ask
see
how common are hybrids. Great question.
I don't know that anybody really knows.
No one wants to do it.
I don't think anybody really knows.
Yeah, probably. They probably do. All goose hybridize.
Yeah, they do. But you can sort of see kind of, especially those two at the center right, as we go from the real stubby billed, short neck.
Those are the tougher ones.
Very obvious Cackling goose, like the bird in the third row, sort of second from the left, with that very, very short head or neck, and very stubby little triangular bill. We can see that's about as classic Cackling goose as you could hope to ask for.
With your bottom left, bottom left.
The bottom left are the one just to the upper right diagonally from it.
Yes,
both of those birds.
Flesh geese. Those are ones that I would expect to see in a farm pond alongside mallards, and be like only a little bit larger than the mallard.
Yeah, and Mia says, in Utah, the lesser Canada geese would come in around the same time as the Cackling and would make her a touch crazy. And that's that's the same thing here in Illinois. But one thing that I have noticed is that they do tend to kind of segregate themselves. And
when there is a certain number of Cackling geese, like when you reach a point, if there's only one Cackling goose in a flock of Canadas, they're going to be completely mixed in. But if you get like 5 Cackling geese in a flock of Canadas, they're going to be all kind of doing their own thing. Right.
They're going to hang out. They're going to hang out together. They know who they are. And we're out, out here when we get them again, when they're just onesies or twosies, that doesn't matter. But we'll get flocks of 30 to 100, and they will tend to stick together in their own little group, and the Canadas and white fronts and other things will kind of stay together as well. But yeah, so you can sort of see the spectrum here of cackling and lesser Canada and get a feel of what to look for. The bill on the Canadas, the one thing they have in common is that the bill is narrower and longer. It's more shoe-shaped than cackling. But now if you look at that one Canada at the top left, that bill is really approaching cackling goose, and that, depending on how big that... It's got a little bit of
a divot, though.
It does.
Like a swole.
It does. But there are some, you can kind of get that on cackling goose as well. And that's what I say. In the middle, there's going to be some birds that you're just going to say, I don't know what this is. And
that's okay.
That is okay.
Just let them go.
That is okay.
You're not a bad birder for deciding not to identify.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I will say that if you have to assign a species to everything you see, that's not being a good birder. That's being dishonest. Here. No, that's being dishonest to yourself. I think, because there are always going to be birds that you cannot identify to species, and if you the term stringing, that's what stringing is, where you don't get a good enough look, but you kind of talk yourself into it and make it happen.
The proportion of unidentified birds gets
something to avoid.
You get more experience, but it never reaches zero.
I would say, as Pete Dunn said, the difference between an experienced birder and a new birder is that an experienced birder has misidentified more birds. That is exceedingly true.
Dave Irons, great to have Dave on the show. Thanks. Lesser Canadas and Taverners cackling goose are a particular challenge on the West Coast. Yes, that is the one that I've always heard about. Glad I don't have to deal with it over here.
Yes, and thank you, Dave.
Goose and tweeners.
Yes, we are not delusional, and we are not going to go into some species. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
However, maybe one day we'll get Steve Milodno in here and just cut him loose and let him go crazy
at some
on
point, if you go looking enough, you're going to get one of those classic cackling geese, and then you can make yourself satisfied with that identification. Just keep looking. You'll find one eventually.
I've seen a couple that are pretty solid, Taverners or whatever, but most of them look like the 6 on the bottom here, and you really can't identify. There may, we're not even going to get into that. So just
well, look, where I live now in North Carolina, we have a ton of Canada geese, both the feral population and also out on the eastern coastal plain part of the state, some of the lesser birds, and those are the ones that people are always looking for cackling geese in. And frequently, interestingly enough, cackling goose like to hang out with snow geese. The big snow geese flocks too, which makes it a much easier identification because they're right in the middle with the snow geese, a very different bird. But I've made myself crazy trying to find a cackling goose in some of these flocks, and I've thrown up my hands many times. And then I'll go back to Missouri, where I grew up, where the cackling geese are a little easier. So we get the kind of more classic, I think they're minima birds. I'm not going to try and do subspecies, but like I said, you see them in a farm pond and you get a mixed flock of like Canada geese, cackling geese, and then like a mallard, and the mallard is floating along next to the cackling goose, and it's like more or less the same size or much closer than you realize, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's what people are talking about. So like I said, go find yourself a classic one and be happy.
Yeah, and on Facebook, Gavin points out that if you hear them calling, that's pretty easy. And yes, if they're flying overhead or they're excited and you hear them calling, I don't know that I've ever heard cackling geese call while on the water or walking. I've only heard them flying over.
Oh, it's a distinctive sound when they're.
But it's very distinctive.
It's very high pitched and weird sounding.
Sounds like kind of like little yipping dogs versus horn honking of a Canada goose.
Yeah.
So yes, if you do hear them flying over, it's very, very distinctive compared to Canada goose. And look at that, we did the thing again.
We did it. We got there. Welcome. It's 2:00 Eastern time.
We did. And
We'll do the reminder.
yes, go for it, Nate.
Hey, it's that time of year where you're looking for gifts for the birder in your life, or you're hoping to make a donation to organizations that you care about. Well, we hope that the American Birding Association would be one of those organizations. Please consider donating or giving a gift membership or re-upping your membership. It's always we're always happy to have you. We're grateful that you feel as though we are worthy of your support, and we look forward to the new year. Get us started in 2025 in a great place to do what we've done and keep going.
Yes,
Thanks everybody.
It sounds like the next time we're going to see you guys is going to be in December. So have a great November and Thanksgiving and all of that. And
enjoy your bird related holidays.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, folks.
Join the ABA. Donate. We'll see you when we see you. Sign up for the newsletter, and we'll let you know when we're back. We'll be back soon. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you in, as Greg said, in December.
See you later, guys.